Hello everyone. For the 3 people who end up watching this video, I welcome you. This is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast. So we're going to cover a ton of movies on this channel, some of which are very easy to find, while others will be more difficult to find. So I wanted to give some information to my viewers on where to buy and watch Asian movies legally. Now for the record, I have never downloaded a movie illegally, despite having seen a lot of obscure films. So there are many legitimate resources to use. The key is to keep a list of websites and then search them on occasion to keep up with the films that are being released. This is what I call scrubbing the distribution channels. So using this simple method, you will have literally thousands of Asian movies at your disposal. But what websites do I use? Let's take a look. Now some of these are fairly obvious resources, but others may be unknown to you, so hopefully that's where my advice can come into play here. I will list all of the websites in the description box below this video, and remember, we're talking primarily about Japanese, South Korean, and Chinese language films. So number 1, Netflix, right? An obvious one. I rent DVDs and stream movies from them. They do have a pretty good selection of Asian movies, especially for someone who's just starting out. However, they seem to be phasing out portions of their library, which is a bit annoying. So there are times where I can no longer find some movies that were available on Netflix in the past. But also keep in mind that you do have to pay a subscription, monthly subscription, to use it. But Netflix is a pretty good place to find a good number of Asian films to start. Number 2, Amazon and Amazon Instant. Again, a pretty good selection of Asian movies to buy and stream. I've purchased tons of Asian movies and television series on DVD from Amazon. There are actually a surprising number of Asian television series that are available for purchase there. It's something that a lot of people don't really know. Number 3, Cineflix. So this is similar to Netflix streaming, but it focuses specifically on newer Asian movies. So it's an excellent supplement to Netflix because Cineflix usually has movies that Netflix does not have. So you cover a wider spectrum. This site is completely legitimate to my knowledge. You will have to pay a monthly subscription fee. And there's also a website called Tiger Cinema that also focuses on Asian films. It's supposed to be pretty good, but I've never used it, so I can't recommend it. The one thing to understand is that the IT security at some of these other websites, like non-popular websites, are less sophisticated than the major websites like Netflix or Amazon. So it might be a good idea to protect yourself by using a prepaid debit card. So that way you could just toss $100 on the prepaid debit card, and that's your total exposure, just in case the card number gets stolen from the website's database. I've never had that happen to me personally, but it's a possibility. It's something I often do when using websites that are not very mainstream, just to protect myself. So number 4, Hulu. Even more movies and television series to watch there. So as an example, I recently watched, this past summer, 42 Keisuke Kinoshita films on that website, almost all of which are totally obscure. And they all had English subtitles, good quality picture and sound, so it's very helpful. I do have Hulu Plus, which requires a monthly subscription, but I'm not entirely sure what benefits I'm receiving from that. I gotta do some research on that to see if it's really worth it. But Hulu in general, with or without a subscription, is useful. Number 5, YouTube. You'll actually be amazed at the number of Asian films that are uploaded onto this website, some of which are also very obscure. So for example, the Korean Film Archive has their own YouTube channel, and they posted close to 100 or so classic South Korean films on YouTube in their entirety with English subtitles. And that channel is 100% legitimate. Now, there are also many instances where movies will be temporarily available on various other YouTube channels due to copyright problems, and they'll eventually be taken down. But even those movies can be seen while they're up, if you keep your eyes open. So YouTube technically isn't an entirely legitimate source, but I consider it fair game. If a movie's up on YouTube, I consider it fair game. Number 6, Crunchyroll. All right. So this is a website that specializes in anime, but also has some other stuff. And there's a good selection of items on there. They also have a few television series. Like I recently watched the Death Note drama series within a few days of it being aired in its home country on Crunchyroll. So that's another good website to use. Number 7, Yes Asia. This is a more expensive website, and it's primarily for purchasing DVDs. They don't have a streaming service or anything, but I do use it quite frequently. So the DVDs on Yes Asia are usually direct releases, I believe, from the country of origin. However, you will likely need an all-region DVD player or Blu-ray player in order to watch the DVDs that are sold on Yes Asia, because they're usually in a Region 2 or Region 3 format that are not playable on a typical Region 1 DVD player in the United States. Excuse me. I'm still getting over my cold. However, if you use VLC player on your computer, it will play DVDs from all region codes. So one thing to keep in mind regarding Yes Asia is that another thing to keep in mind is that the Japanese DVD specifically will usually not have English subtitles. The Korean and the Hong Kong DVDs usually do have English subtitles. So for the Japanese films, you really got to read it and see what's up there. However, I have watched and enjoyed a number of Japanese films without subtitles, and I'm not fluent in Japanese. So this is particularly true with genres like horror and action that rely on more visual storytelling and visual entertainment rather than dialogue. There are exceptions to that, obviously, but I have enjoyed a plentiful amount of such movies without subtitles. And even in the future, when I've rewatched the movie with subtitles, sometimes I find that I really didn't miss all that much, because the movie is so visually impactful and it uses visuals so much that the dialogue is almost like just gravy. You know what I mean? It's just a bonus. So that might actually be a topic for a separate video I'm going to do, because some people don't believe me when I tell them that. But it's an option. But Yes Asia is very, very useful. Number 8, eBay and iOffer. So these are two sites where you can get some obscure DVDs. Unfortunately, there are some bootleggers floating around there. So eBay bootleggers are worse, because they usually sell DVDs with bad subtitles, like completely just gibberish. Like they ran it through some computer program and it just spits out gibberish in English. Well, you can't even call it English. So it's almost like pointless, you know what I mean, to get subtitles with some of those movies. So if you ever see a movie description on eBay that references average subtitle quality or subtitles with grammatical errors, don't buy it, unless you don't mind watching the movie without subs. Now, iOffer bootleggers at least sell DVDs with perfect subtitles, but I try to avoid them because we want our money getting back to the actual filmmakers, right? So iOffer and eBay are a good option. You just gotta be a little bit more careful with those two websites. Number 9. This is the last website here that I'm going to be recommending. Viki.com and Drama Fever. Now, I watch a lot of South Korean and Japanese television series, and there are tons of them on these two websites. Tons of them. Again, you may be able to catch the new ones within days of them being aired in their home countries, and they're with perfect English subtitles. So that's really cool. There are a lot of comparable sites. If you Google search like different television series, you'll come across various sites that have the word drama in them, but not all of them are legitimate. So you just got to be careful with that. So those websites basically form the backbone of my Asian movie distribution channel, and I have found this to be an extremely effective strategy at finding tons of movies and television series to watch. Now, I like to give out some random pointers to people that are thinking of buying or watching Asian movies. Just some things that came to mind while I was writing this up. So number one, as I mentioned earlier, it makes things easier to have an all-region DVD or Blu-ray player. That way you don't have to worry about different region codes when you buy stuff. So there are a bunch of different brands online. Just Google it. You could probably Google or even search YouTube for all-region DVD or Blu-ray players. You can find videos on that type of thing with recommendations. And also, as I mentioned earlier, I use VLC Media Player on my computer, which is excellent. Number two, you have to be patient, okay? When you're doing things legally, you have to be patient, right? Which is what I do. So I live in the United States, and sometimes I simply have to wait a few years to see my most highly anticipated Asian films. That's just the way it is. So I am jealous of the many YouTube movie reviewers who are Americans and primarily watch American cinema, because they can just throw out their top 10 or their top 20 film list at the end of the calendar year and be done with it. You know what I mean? There's no possible way I'll ever be able to do that, because there's always a lag or a delay when attempting to see the newest Asian films. It may sound like I'm complaining a little bit, but I'm actually kind of spoiled. Take 2014 as an example. So by June 30th of the following year, 2015, I had seen over 150 Asian films from 2014. It's pretty good. But there's still a number of highly anticipated films from 2014 that I'm still waiting for, and it's 2016. And I probably won't see them, some of these, until 2017 or 2018. So, another thing to recognize is that the first 6 months of the year, there's a big lag. So, as of June 30th, 2015, I had only seen 7 Asian films from 2015 up to that point. So there's a lag. Things start to pick up near the second half of the year for that particular year's Asian films, with DVD releases from movies that were released theatrically in their home countries at the beginning of the year. But there's definitely a lag there. You're going to have to get used to it if you're into this thing. On the other hand, and this is an extreme example, I had to wait 8 years to see a movie called Secret Tears, which is a Korean film from the year 2000 that I had heard of for a long time before it finally popped up on Cineflix, I think. So it was a very good movie, but 8 years I had to wait. So with all that said, the aforementioned distribution channels that I mentioned still keep me insanely busy. It's not like I'm just sitting around waiting for movies. There's always an influx of interesting movies coming in. It's just that some of the ones that I identify that I want to see just slip through, and it takes a while for them to show up. So remember, you got to keep scrubbing the distribution channels, and eventually, the movies will pop up. So number 3, blind buys are a necessity. Yes, it would be nice and more affordable if we were able to just rent or stream every Asian movie first, and then simply buy your favorites on DVD after. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So I have been forced on many occasions to blind buy hundreds of movies because they never showed up on Cineflix or Netflix or other streaming sites. Even on Yes Asian, they have a huge library. So when this happens, it's important to do some research on the individual titles to assess whether or not it's worth a blind buy. Actually, Yes Asia was a bad example. Yes Asia is where I go to for blind buys. They're not a rental site, they're a DVD site. I made a mistake there. But when you're buying these movies, an additional problem is that some of them might be obscure and may have only 1 or 2 reviews on the internet that you can find in English that you can rely on. So not only do you have a blind buy, but you have a very limited, if any, number of reviews to go on to tell you if the movie's any good. So I personally find that blind buys are much easier when they are focusing on particular directors that I already love, because the chances of enjoying the movie are that much higher. So of all the blind buys that I've had to do, I would have to say that at least 2/3 of them I have enjoyed. So, and some of them were outstanding. So if you do a little research and you know your way around, and you know your directors and your actors and your fans of certain movies, blind buys can be a pretty reliable thing to rely on. Number 4, you will accidentally buy bootleg DVDs. It is completely unavoidable. So there's no way you're going to compile a hefty collection of Asian movie DVDs while completely avoiding bootlegs. It's impossible. Heck, I've received bootlegs from Amazon before. So what do you do when you receive one? Usually, if it's available elsewhere, I return it, get my money back, and then buy it legitimately somewhere else. But what if it's an extremely obscure film that you've been waiting for, and you finally found a DVD of it, and you realize, man, this is kind of a bootleg DVD? What do? Well, in that case, you watch it first, and then return it, right? Because when else are you ever going to see the movie again? Now, number 5, splurge when necessary. This is another important one. So sometimes there will be a sale or a website that has an influx of particular movies. When this happens, it may be a good idea to splurge if you have the money to do so. So this is the best way to get kind of ahead of the game. So for example, a few years ago, I purchased a few dozen lesser-known Hong Kong action movies on iOffer, mostly starring Yukari Oshima and Moon Lee, who I'm a big fan of. So they sat on my living room table for like months as I kind of whittled away at them. But there was peace of mind in knowing that I had most of their hard-to-find filmography already in my possession and ready to watch. So I do this quite a bit, especially when Christmas time comes around. You know, I'll spend a few hours just looking and compiling a list, trying to find stuff that might be on sale, and bam, just hitting a ton of stuff and just stockpiling it. Number 6, out-of-print titles are an unfortunate reality. It does occur, and it sucks when it does. So let me give you an example. There is an excellent Japanese horror film called Noroi that came out in 2005. When it first came out, there were plenty of all-region international DVDs floating around. So a few years later, I bought like 1 or 2 for myself. A few years later, I looked for one to give as a present to someone I knew, but all of the all-region DVDs were out of print and just completely gone. So all that was left were the Region 3 Hong Kong releases, which isn't a problem for me, but it was useless as a present because my friend didn't have an all-region DVD player. So I'm still waiting, 10 years later, for the official US DVD release of Noroi, which is practically a freaking masterpiece. And it's a joke it hasn't happened yet, but it still hasn't happened yet. So as another example, there was a Chinese television drama named Moment in Peking from 2005 that actually had a US DVD release, but is inexplicably no longer available. So it's going to happen. So on a related topic, not all DVD websites last forever. So back in the day, I used to use ehit.com and HKFlix for many of my rentals and purchases, but both of those websites are long gone now. So it's just something you have to live with. Number 7. I keep a separate and very long list of movies that I want to see in like a Microsoft Word doc that are not yet available. So it helps me to remember what titles I should be looking for. Because if you see a trailer online, you're like, ooh, that movie looks cool. Or you see an article saying this movie's going to come out with one of your favorite actors. That looks cool. I just jot it down in the Word doc and then look at the Word doc, every once in a while I'm scrubbing the distribution channels and then look for those movies. And then I add to the list, more movies as I see that look like they could be interesting to watch. However, another little nuance with following Asian films is that it's it's more difficult to keep up to date with Asian movies that are in production or in pre-production. I mean, this isn't Hollywood where every single casting decision and every single bit of movie news are dissected by hundreds of internet personalities. So there are times when one of my favorite directors or actors releases a movie and I had no idea it was coming out. So it's kind of an odd situation to be in for a movie fan, but it provides lots of surprises. Maybe one day I'll research and post a video with recommendations on Asian movie news websites, but some of my favorites recently closed up shop. So I'm going to try in kind of a transition phase myself on that. Alright, so that covers the basic topics that I wanted to discuss in this video. If you have any specific recommendations for websites to purchase or watch Asian movie DVDs, whether it's actually renting the DVDs, buying the DVDs, or watching Asian movies streaming, just link those in the comments section below. But please try to limit yourself to the legal websites. I don't want this to turn into a torrent or bootleg discussion. I'll basically be forced to delete your post because I don't want my video getting deleted. You know what I mean? So that's. I hope this video was at least somewhat helpful for you. And as always, we'll see you next time.